Hello, everyone. It's so good to see everybody here and back in person. I was thinking this morning, actually, on the way in, I think it must have been exactly 5 years ago today that I was on the startup panel for the same forum back at Kayana Lodge, sitting in those chairs, and I had just landed back in Kitsap and was introducing the whole concept of what Vibe Coworks was going to be, what we hoped it would be, and what we hoped it would mean for entrepreneurship and business growth in this community. So it's really fun to be back here today with our three panelists. We've got Nick Johnson, Katie Hoffman, and Luke Swanson. And each of them have kind of come through Vibe in different ways. Nick was actually kind of our Vibe member number one, I think, really.
I think that's two.
Number two?
I think I was two. Does this work? No?
Yeah. Testing.
Yeah, I think I was number two. I think Dan beat me.
Oh, well, up for debate. I
was number one.
And then Katie, I've met most recently. She passed through Vibe not too long ago, recently moved to this area and was looking for a meeting space for their investors and board members here in Kitsap, and so came across our path in that way. And Luke Swanson with GovGig, I think we can kind of claim as the first, or maybe the biggest, we'll put it that way, business that is really founded at our tables within our walls of Vibe by relationships that were born in our space. So really fun to have everyone here. Nick, I want you to start us off. Give us the 411 quick introduction of your company. Tell us the number one question you're most tired of hearing about your company, and what would you like to say about it so you never have to answer it again?
Sure, thank you. So Libra FM Audiobooks is a company that me and two of my friends from college founded about 8 years ago. I don't know if that means we're still a startup or not, but I'm up here, so I guess so. We provide a way for independent bookstores to sell digital audiobooks to their customers. That's it in a nutshell. It's a way to help independent bookstores participate in the growth of audiobooks, which are growing dramatically, especially with people listening. Hey, look at that. Especially with people listening to podcasts and things of that nature. We partner with about 2,000 independent bookstores, mostly in North America. So if you go to pretty much any independent bookstore in the country, you are purchasing an audiobook through us, and we split the profits with them. We'll be going international to the UK, Australia, and New Zealand shortly. I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. What am I tired of people asking me is how do we make the audiobooks? Because we don't make audiobooks at all. We partner with publishers who make audiobooks, and then we make that audiobook available. So the same audiobook you would get from our biggest competitor, Amazon, is the same audiobook you'd get through your local bookstore with the same George Clooney narrating it or whatever. And that's also the same answer to the third question, which I don't want to have to answer anymore. And that's one thing I wish people would know is that we don't make the audiobooks. And then I guess in addition to that, if you want to vote with your money, if you want to support your local community, if you want to support KEDA's cleverly named Go Local, Buy Local, whatever campaign that Joe was talking about, go to your independent bookstores and buy audiobooks and print books through them.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Katie Hoffman. I'm one of three co-founders of the startup called Phaedra. We are a 100% remote company. We have 70 employees and growing in 7 different countries. We started the company about 3 years ago. My co-founders and I were all engineers, so we basically kind of converged on the Seattle area, and then COVID happened, and we decided to go fully remote. So that's kind of the way that we grew that way organically. Our company is focused on reducing the resource intensity of the industrial space. So myself and my two co-founders, we've spent our careers working in the industrial space, data centers, Google DeepMind with AI and reinforcement learning. And we basically realized that a lot of this technology that right now is used very predominantly for things like cat videos, we wanted to use this technology for something better. And so we founded Phaedra under the premise that you can use technologies like machine learning in order to better control large industrial infrastructure. And so we're focused on really, really large pharmaceutical companies, data centers, pulp and paper manufacturing, which we do have a lot here in the Pacific Northwest. And we basically use this technology to better optimize how these systems work. I think your next question was...
The number one question you're most tired of hearing about your company, and what you'd like to say about it so you never have to say it again.
Yeah, I think the number one question that we get is, does it work? I think one of the challenges that we have in the industrial space is that, it's very, very old industries. Some of the companies that we work with are over 100 years old. And they're used to kind of getting, snake oil thrown at them, where everyone says AI, everyone says machine learning. And our team, we come from, the premier, AI company, in the world, which is DeepMind out of London. And so for us, I'd like it if they stopped asking that. And the only way for them to stop asking that is to prove it, right? These customers aren't early adopters, right? They're looking for technology that works. They're looking for something that makes their lives easier and helps to reduce, the energy intensity of their systems. So, I think the answer to how we stop that is really just prove it out. And that's what we've been doing over the past 3 years.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's.
Tell us about GovGig.
Sure. Well, GovGig started in Vibe, thanks to Elena and her founding of Vibe. We have 16 direct full-time employees, approximately 8 contractors, approximately 2,000 users within the software. They're all pre-vetted, pre-qualified federal construction professionals, ranging from continental United States to outside of continental United States. We focus on federal construction professional services, talent acquisition, and training. 3 years ago, we started it, and it's grown very, very quickly. Federal construction is very underserved for technology. Just across the street here, we have billions of dollars about ready to hit. Kitsap is a major focus globally, and there's a huge window here of opportunity for this community to come together and build out not only the shipyard but Navy-based Kitsap. Some of the questions that I get consistently that I'm just kind of tired of hearing of is, so you're like Indeed? No, we're not. We're humans. We're of your community. We're subject matter experts ranging from professional engineers, government contract attorneys, former public works officers, contracting officers, et cetera, basically building a database, facilitating and expediting federal construction contracting.
So, again, thinking back, can you hear me? This one doesn't say, yeah, on, yeah. Thinking back 5 years ago, KEDA certainly did not have an innovation and entrepreneurship group dedicated within the organization. And of course, entrepreneurship, small business, startups have always been here in Kitsap. But I think if you look at it, particularly Kitsap within the Pacific Northwest region, there's a lot more conversation about what that ecosystem is and how far it extends. So some of you may have seen this summer, Seattle was actually ranked number 9 in the world for startup ecosystems. And last week, a new report ranked Seattle as number 5 in the country for best cities for remote workers. So back again, all 3 of you, tech companies, remote distributed, based in some definitions here in Kitsap, but certainly with arms and tenants and talent all over the world. And Seattle has also just been ranked the 11th highest number of co-working spaces in the country per 100,000 residents. So we are, Kitsap is different. We're not Seattle, but we're very much part of this regional pool of opportunity, I think you can say. And I think, Katie, that comes back to you. You recently moved Phaedra to Silverdale, or at least part of it. You're part of it. Why Kitsap?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when my co-founders and I moved to the Pacific Northwest, we're all engineers, so we took a very technical approach. We literally made a matrix. And as we were kind of looking at, all the different cities that we could found ourselves in, it made perfect sense to be in the Pacific Northwest. And, we moved to Westlake, and there was no good internet, which was weird. And we got our first pre-seed round, and then, COVID shut everything down, right? Like a week after we raised our pre-seed, COVID shut everything down. And we were going to be in one of those co-working spaces in Seattle. And so we took a very intentional approach to say, okay, let's be 100% remote. And what we ended up doing was, about 6 or 7 months in, the CEO and I decided, like, hey, like let's move, right? Let's actually go somewhere more intentionally. And the east side of Seattle is completely saturated, right? It's really, really difficult, especially for a smaller stage startup, which we were at the time. And we started looking west, and we really fell in love with the Kitsap Peninsula. There's a lot of great opportunities here. We found that there were things like the Vibe co-working spaces, so we could reasonably hold meetings there. At an affordable rate. We could get offices if we needed to. And we just liked the growth potential of this area, and so that's really why we landed here in the Kitsap Peninsula.
Go Kitsap. Nick, you're also distributed, fully remote company. You, of course, longtime Kitsapian. How has being remote helped or hindered you as a company? And how has that impacted the amount of name recognition, especially that you have locally or across the Pacific Northwest?
Sure. Wow, that was loud. Sure. I am originally from Kitsap. I was born in Harrison, just a few miles from here. We started out fully distributed. When we were founded 8 years ago, we decided to go that direction. We really based how we built our company off WordPress, the content management open source platform, if anyone's familiar with that. We did that because we wanted freedom for, mainly us three founders. We didn't want to have to go into an office. And have a lot of freedom to travel and work from where we're at, from where we wanted to, and also just overhead, to not have to deal with that overhead as a startup. And when money was tight, was a great way for us to kind of build this. And when we started the company, none of us founders were fully committed. We all had full-time jobs, and it was kind of an idea that we slowly built into. But we have stayed distributed because it's just worked out really, really well for our team. We can attract top talent from anywhere in the world. Funny thing is, our Android developer, we did a national search for an Android developer, and we poached someone from Disney who happens to live over by Kitsap Lake. So we did a national search, and his son is actually in the same grade as my daughter, which is just a small world because there is great talent here. But it has allowed us to kind of spread that net wide and really bring in top talent. And then once a year, twice a year, we just fly everyone somewhere and we just have a good time together. And we have the money to do that because we don't have the overhead of paying for an office all year. Now, that's painting a very rosy picture of it. It's not all that way. There's a lot of challenges. How do you, develop those relationships? How do you mentor younger employees when they don't have someone who's right next to them who can mentor them? How do you deal with HR issues and all that sort of stuff? So there's a lot that you need to think about differently. And then as your company grows, as ours has grown, things have changed. So it's not all rosy, but there's definitely a ton of benefits. And the funny thing is, all of us founders and our initial 5 or 6 team members were all based in the Seattle area. And now really only 2 of us are. Everyone else has moved different places where their life took them, where their spouse took them, so on and so forth. But they haven't lost a beat in terms of working with the company and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how we've been, building it in a distributed manner. And what was the second part of the question there? Or did I answer it?
How has it impacted the amount of name recognition for you?
Oh,
And maybe
yes.
maybe that's not important. Just like talking name recognition here in the Pacific Northwest.
Really, name recognition for us specifically in Kitsap isn't that big of a deal because really we're a kind of a behind-the-scenes company. We really want people to have the name recognition of their independent bookstore wherever they're at. And so we don't really focus on trying to get name recognition like where we're specifically at. We just want each independent bookstore, wherever they're at, to boost their name recognition, and they're kind of like our marketing team. So we have about 20 full-time employees in our company, but we have 10,000 booksellers who are promoting and marketing us. So we're not as focused on name recognition in our specific community, but in every little local community and with every group that wants to support their local independent businesses.
I think that's one thing that's really interesting when we talk about the Kitsap business community and the Kitsap ecosystem. I think first off, or most often, about a lot of our storefront companies. And I think that's one of the challenges before us, is to really recognize and understand how many companies are here locally that don't have storefronts, that we don't see visibly, that are active all across the country, all across the world, How do we hear their stories? How do we tell their stories? How do we connect up with them? So, Luke, I know we were saying, born at Vibe. Since then, you've grown like crazy. It's amazing to see how you went from he dominated. He made the table in the corner his and his alone, and then has grown to actually having quite a few team members that use the space, a private office at the space. How has Kitsap's strength, specifically as a center of government defense and contracting, played into the evolution of your company?
Industry has been very receptive. I mean, we come from a lot of deep connections, proven results in federal contracting. The tribes here locally have been very receptive. Alaska Native corporations, small business, the federal government, Department of Navy, Army Corps of Engineers. They see what we do and how timely and accurately we produce documentation and expedite these contracts. Kitsap's been paramount for our growth, not only here locally, but Pearl Harbor, Portsmouth, Norfolk, just all the way across the country. There's so many communities very similar to Kitsap that rely so much on the economy of DoD contracting, and it needs to be a very focal point for this community and the growth and the funding that's coming here. I can't emphasize that enough.
I want to change gears for a minute and I want to talk about money. Because especially in the Kitsap context, this is something that I hear all the time, is this debate over, do we have enough capital here to attract startups? Can they actually find the capital that they need to succeed here? Do they have to leave in order to get that? And I think, so Nick and Luke, both of you are bootstrapped. Katie, you've just closed a $25 million Series A round. So some very different contexts of how they're choosing to grow their businesses. Katie, let's start with you.
Yeah, we're very fortunate, because of the ease of access to get to Seattle, we can work in that, VC ecosystem. So both our pre-seed and our seed investment rounds were led by Flying Fish, which is based out of Seattle. And that kind of close proximity to them really helped us to open up the network that we had in order to get to our Series A round, which is the one that we just closed. We have, VC investment from all across, across the world. We have, our lead investor is actually based down in the Los Angeles area. So is our largest major institutional investor. And then we have some from Minnesota. So it's kind of all over the place, but I would say that, being here, it's easy to get to Seattle. It's easy to have those conversations with the VCs if you want to.
So if I'm understanding your story correctly, the money piece of it didn't factor into it so much as the lifestyle piece in proximity for Kitsap here.
As far as coming to Kitsap? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really had to make a decision as far as where we were going to be based on more of... there's an intersection between industrials and tech, and that's something that is very unique to this part of the world. So, yeah.
Luke, you want to tell us your bootstrap story, and then we'll kick back over to Nick?
Sure. Our business units have funded our software development. The software development of GovGig has been put together by some of the biggest names around. Senior architect behind Adobe, CTO from Windermere. Collectively with subject matter experts, we've built this thing. From our manual components of what we provide services to tribes, Alaska Native corporations, small businesses, et cetera, has been able to fulfill the needs of a big uplift of developing software. We have 100% control of GovGig. We have no private equity, no private capital. We just have put it together, worked really hard, and made it happen.
Nick?
Yeah, so we're bootstrapped, and we did that by choice because, our initial partners are all independent bookstores, and they have been burned before by trying to partner with different tech companies, and that didn't necessarily have their best interest in mind. So when we started Libro, we took what we call the marathon instead of sprint approach. We saw some similar companies in the space that were funded, and they were kind of taking the sprint approach, and we were looking at that saying, that we don't believe is quite right for the industry and quite right for the bookstores, which are our audience. And so we were taking this kind of slow and steady approach, funding it ourselves. which has worked. It's definitely had some challenges. There's things that we wish we could do quicker. There's, wish we could bring on more engineers and build more tech. But it's worked really well for us, and it's actually put us in an interesting situation where we have a lot of investors who are interested in us, and we've had a lot of people come to us and want to invest in our company, including some pretty big names. But we've just said no because we like having 100% control of the company. We don't feel that we need investors at this time. And it's allowed us to kind of stay true to our values as a company. We recently, in 2020, became a social purpose corporation, which allows us to operate with nonprofit values, but in a for-profit space. That's something we probably couldn't have done if we had investor backing. And so it's been a good approach for us. Obviously, you need to have some finances to be able to bootstrap it, and luckily me and my founders did. But it's worked well, and we're pleased with the approach we're taking.
I love that you guys are social purpose. I'd love to see more of that in Kitsap, actually. It's something we've talked a lot about, is how do we build community around B Corp companies and social purpose companies, because it is kind of a lonely road, especially when you're some of the first ones in the area doing it. So anyone who wants to talk shop on that, please find me. I want to ask one more question, then I want to kick it over to audience questions for a minute. But I can't be up here without asking this. And you've touched a little bit on it already in terms of overhead, but what role do you think co-working spaces have in the growth and success of new businesses and startups and any business, really?
I'll go ahead and start out. So for us as a fully distributed company since the ground up, it's been great for our employees because our employees can work where they want. We have a lot of employees who work from home, have home offices. We have a lot of employees who jump from coffee shop to coffee shop. On Tuesday, you can see in their Zoom background that they're at whatever. And then we have employees who, like myself, like a co-working space. They like a way to go out and work somewhere where they can focus and not be interrupted by their kids or cat or so on and so forth. And we compensate our employees for that. And so it has worked really, really well for us to be able to allow our employees to choose the sort of workspace that works best for them, that works well with their lifestyle, works well with if they have to take kids to school or not to school. And then for me, I love that fiber internet. As a tech company, when I have 900 megabytes per second download, I'm a happy camper. So the other part about that is being a distributed company. I had a small office in downtown Paulsville for a while, which I liked, great view of the water and the mountains, but I was just sitting there by myself, lonely all day. Where now at Vibe, I have all these, they're not really coworkers, but they're people I see every day, and I'm invested in what's going on in their lives and their families, and I could talk around the water cooler with them. And so I am a huge, huge fan of co-working.
Yeah, I think, the way that we use co-working, very similarly, we reimburse, we 100% encourage our employees, regardless of where they are, to be using co-working spaces if they'd like. They can work from home, they can work from the co-working spaces. But one of the fundamental things that's important for us is the utilization of co-working spaces for meetings, whether it's board meetings, meetings with, specific investors, meeting with customers, meeting with leadership teams, engineering teams, et cetera. So we really like co-working spaces for that reason, and it enables you to kind of do this wherever. And we do plan on, utilizing, Vibe quite a bit over the coming year, especially as our leadership team has grown. I think that's really the most important thing for us.
Sure, I really like the networks. Bringing different ideas, bringing like-minded professionals together, bringing outside-of-the-box ideas that influence our society. That's what I'm most passionate about in dealing with co-working spaces. Our software development team was at Vibe, and it just happened. And we collaborated, and I started writing checks, basically. So that was a big part of it. The support, the functions of who's going to show up there the next day and who wants to talk. A lot of ad lib conversations happen, and a lot of them mature into business relationships.
And I will say, I saw the KPUD team cheering over there. KPUD Vibe is on KPUD Fiber, so we're very happy with our KPUD service.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to I've got lots of questions. I could sit here and ask questions all day. But I would like to hear from the audience. So do we have a mic runner out there, or should I run this one? Yeah? Do you need this one? I'll give you this one.
Good hustle, Joe.
Thanks. I'm meeting my stand and calorie burning goals for the day. Questions for the startups? No questions for the start? Okay. Oh, Deidre Miller's got one. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I have less of a question, but more of a statement of gratitude. I can't see who was speaking when. I think it was you, Katie, who described Kitsap as a great place where industry and tech kind of collide and was unique to this place in the world. You said world, and I'm so used to hearing Kitsap being compared to being adjacent to Seattle. And even when we all travel, everybody wants to know where we're from. It always ends up in comparison to where Seattle is. So I appreciate, and I want us all to think about Kitsap as a unique place in the world. So thank you for saying that. Absolutely.
So for a like fledgling or essentially like a gentleman like myself who's trying to start up his own company, what would be like the most impactful resource that you guys as obviously successful CEOs or CEOs have utilized in your startups?
I know for Libro, probably mentorships. Finding people through, it could be networking at Vibe, it could be through KEDA, through whatever, who've kind of walked down that path before you, who can kind of, tell you about their experience, help you avoid some of the pitfalls, help you make some of those decisions. I definitely think for us specifically, finding a few key mentors has been probably one of the most useful things.
Yeah, I'll mirror that. We found an advisor very early on, and all we had was a pitch deck and like the three of us. So we knew we had to go get institutional investment if that's like the route that you're thinking about going. And a lot of it's around intros. And so having good advisors, mentors that can make those intros, probably the breakthrough for us was actually getting connected to the right legal counsel who then opened the doors, to go and talk with the right folks, from banking to, HR to all the different things. So that definitely was a big breakthrough for us. Yeah.
Mirroring with them once again, mentorship, finding adequate professionals, legal, accounting, financial modeling, engineers of whatever industry you're in, finding a resource of people who have been there, who have done that, and made the mistakes, and most importantly, made the mistakes and showed you where they went wrong, and learning from that and trying not to replicate that.
Any other questions from the audience for our startups here in Kitsap? Well, yeah. You can do it. Okay.
Can I finish up? I want to share one thing, and then I'm going to kick one last question back to the panel to close out here. I did want to mention one of the other really exciting things. My phone's going to go flying. That we've had that's kind of come up in the last year is we've gotten teamed up with the Washington Technology Industry Association, WTIA, and they secured a grant. I think it's a 2-year grant. Don't quote me on this. That specifically supports workshops and programming around startups, kind of the beginning to end, what it takes to get something off the ground. And we're so delighted to be able to host those at Vibe. So we have the next one is coming up next Wednesday. They're lunchtime sessions. They're totally free. Lunch is included. And then in November, you all have this sheet of paper on your tables. November 16th, we'll be celebrating Global Entrepreneurship Week, and we have kind of a 2-pronged, really exciting special happening with them. So the normal lunchtime workshop is actually being extended into a full half-day startup community day. With a really great program. They're bringing some great people over from the Seattle side to match up with the great people that we have here on the Kitsap side. And then we're going to be finishing off that day from 4 until 6 with a startup mixer. So really a networking opportunity for anybody who's interested in entrepreneurship, from the mentor, advisor, investor side, as well as the founder, entrepreneur, small business owner side, to come together and start to build some of these relationships. So it's free. Please sign up. Please join us. But before we go, I wanted to ask you guys what, and I'll start with you, Luke. If folks in this room could do one thing to support you and help propel your business forward, what would that be for GovGig?
Sure. Well, understanding the lift of what we have here in Kitsap with the upcoming projects for the Department of Navy is a big piece. And then to advocate for what we do in professional services, talent acquisition, and training. Outside of that, speak publicly as much as you can, and it would be greatly appreciated.
I think that probably the most important thing for us is really just building the infrastructure and continuing to run the businesses that helps to attract remote talent. There's a lot of tech workers over on the Seattle area that have been, migrating over here. I think, continuing to, foster, the development here that helps that. That's great, right? Because I think, to your point, a lot of the networking that you get to do at Vibe and the other co-working spaces and the ecosystem that's here, that's only going to continue to kind of get the flywheel effect going. And I think that's really important.
I love an engineer referencing flywheels. I'm going to actually give a two-part answer. The first part is very quick, just shop local. Shop local, buy your books and audiobooks from your independent bookstores. That's going to support my business. It's going to support them. It's going to support your community. The second thing that's, I think, probably more applicable to everyone in this audience is we do have a business program. So if you want to educate your employees or your workforce on leadership or other such topics, you can actually buy audiobooks as a perk for your employees directly through us. What's really cool about that is that a percentage of that actually goes back to a specific independent bookstore of your choice. A really quick example is we partner with Nike, and Nike bought, I'm just going to throw a number out there, $30,000 worth of audiobooks and chose to support a small bookstore in Oregon, not Powell's, a little one. So we got to have one of those Oprah moments where we call up the bookstore and say, hey, here's a $5,000 check. You didn't have to do anything, but this is through our business program. So that's something I think is applicable here, where if you want to provide a worker perk to your employees, you want to help educate them on, like I said, leadership, issues around DEI, issues around disability. There's a really great disability visibility book that our company recently read. That's a really, really great resource to support your company, or support the community, and to provide some resources to your workforce.
Awesome. With that, I think it's a wrap. I'm looking at Carol. I did neglect to mention the Startup Happy Hour Mixer is sponsored also in partnership with Kitsap Bank. So we have kind of a three-way partnership on the Mixer. The workshop will be a lot of fun. Thank you, Joe and KEDA team, for having us on here. Thank you all for including startups and entrepreneurship as part of your considerations of what this county looks like. So thank you.